Hey, everybody. Hey, happy Thursday. If you're on here, hit that like button, tag anybody on this discussion, share with someone that you think may find it interesting. I'm super excited about today's discussion. I'm going to put on my listening ears because I do not pretend to be an expert on some of these topics, but it should be good. Now, as a quick little backdrop, for those of you guys who don't know, I did a poll maybe about 2-3 weeks ago where I basically asked a lot of my audience, what would be their dating preference. And for like Latin America, Latinas, Afro Latinas, they just like knocked it out of the park. I think it was almost like 60% of my followers were just like, yeah, that would be our preference. So I thought, okay, let's just bring on some different Latinas, different people from the culture who can really speak to Latina femininity and give us some insight as to whether or not some of these ideas floating around about them being more feminine, them being more submissive, all this different stuff, whether or not it's true. So I'm really excited to have these lovely ladies come on and talk about these different topics. As always, guys, hit the like button. Also, if you would like to show support to the show, you can do so. You can find me on Cash App or Venmo today. And as always, I'll be sure to acknowledge all super chats. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on the lovely ladies and we will get started with the conversation. Okay. Hello, lovely ladies.
Hi.
I don't know if my lighting sucks, so I don't know if you want me to come up.
All good.
I'm sorry, the lighting is crazy today.
Well, thank you for joining. I'm excited about today's discussion. This idea of like Latinas coming in and like stealing or just taking these men from different communities has been around for some time. So I know it's a bit of a hot topic. It's a bit of a touchy subject, but I think, of course, I'm going to do my best to try to create a space where you guys can see your perspective and not feel like you're about to be judged or nothing. We're just here to have a conversation. So, so again, guys, I have the lovely Wome Sapien on joining us. Thank you for joining. Also, Luke Hazley and Denise, and they're going to be weighing in and offering their perspective as Latina women. I'm sure you have a lot to offer. So, just to get right into, just to kind of get right into the topic, as I mentioned, one of the things that I think I've heard, and you guys can confirm, one of the things that I've heard going around Latina women are naturally more feminine, submissive, cooperative, like that's what they bring to the table. So I want to ask this, in your opinion, are Latinas naturally submissive women? I will start with you, Wome Sapien. Or Ali, I know how you want to call you on this podcast.
Oh, you can call me Ali. Let me know how my Wi-Fi is. My answer is no. My answer is no.
I'm hearing a bit of, okay, I'm sorry. All of a sudden, I'm hearing a bit of feedback. Ladies, when you're not talking, if you wouldn't mind muting your mics, just FYI. Let's see if that helps. I was hearing a bit of feedback, so let's try that again. You were clear before we went live. So let's see if this works out.
Well, I'm hoping I can answer your question. Is it working now?
I don't know why.
Okay. So my answer is no. I actually think Kevin Samuels sold black men a lie. Like, I'm so sorry. No, I think he was wrong in many ways, but the ways that I can talk about being Latina, so I'm Puerto Rican, and that requires a little bit of a breakdown. What is this like a good time to go into a mini breakdown, or are we just going to go around and talk about like natural submission?
No, that's called, but okay, I want to make sure you guys, are you hearing her fine? I'm hearing a little bit of static, but I don't know if it's just me. Okay,
I hear static too.
That's so weird because you were like totally fine like 2 minutes ago, right before we went live. So let's I don't know if you may want to hop back or maybe hop back in or check audio and see if that'll help. But in the meantime, as you're working on that, I will direct the question to you, Luke Hazley. In your opinion, are Latina women naturally submissive women?
I think it depends. I think the Latinas here in the United States are following a different culture than if you were living in, for example, I'm from Nicaragua and Venezuela. I was born in Nicaragua, raised in Venezuela. So I think that the culture is different once you go into our country. Ali's talking about Puerto Rican culture, which is very close to American culture. So I think it differs a little bit. And I don't know if Latin Spain and you can, I don't know if you have a little more in-depth knowledge about that. That's how I see it.
I don't know. I would like to ask Ali, because I don't know if she was raised here in the States. I was raised in the island.
Okay.
So yes, I see the difference major. Like I agree with you 100%. The Puerto Rican culture here is very, very much American rather than the culture back at home where it's completely different. So I think I agree with you. It all depends on the location, because everyone that's here, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily related to the people per se. It's just, I'd like to call it Americanisms, you know, to a degree. American women overall, because of the culture of the country, follow a different path. The dream for women here it's a little different than the dream for us back at home in Latin America. So of course it's going to look like that from the outside looking in.
So you know what's interesting? So I would just, this is just something that I noticed, because I live, in California, and there's a huge Latino population out here, primarily Mexicans, a lot of Mexicans, Salvadorians in certain spots. And I remember back when I was working at this country club, and it was like an entire family that was working there with me. And there was this one girl in particular. I think she was like 17, 18, really young. And I remember having a conversation with her one day, and she was like, man, like, I need to have a baby. Like, I'm getting old. And I'm like, what? Like, you're like 19. And she was like, so pressed to have a kid. Like, she was literally like, I need to have a baby. But she was from El Salvador. So we talked back and forth, and eventually I figured, I was like, maybe this is a cultural difference, because I'm like, that wasn't what I heard growing up. It was very much like, no, you don't even think about kids, like career, like all of that. But this is a woman who would come over from another nation, and she's so pressed to have a kid at like 19. And at that point, I was thinking, like, I think this has to be a cultural difference, because where is this pressure coming from? I thought it was so interesting. So yeah. I don't know if that's something, like, if you could speak to some of the core differences or key differences that you notice coming from the islands versus being now the USA.
Well, in the Caribbean, at least, there's not, like, I would say, if we let Luke Hasley explain, like, even in her country, both of her countries, you will see even a difference among, like, the Caribbean Latinos and South America or Central American Latinos. There's a lot of differences there, just like there's a difference between the diaspora of Latinos and Latinos from Latin America, because I think femininity is always going to be tied to industrialization of a country. The more you need a man for your day-to-day life, the more feminine you're going to tend to be, depending on how the country is developed. So the less developed the country is, or the less industrialized that country is, of course, the women are going to deem the man, quote unquote, obsolete. So with that being said, in Puerto Rico, there was a time where the island was booming to a degree. That was in the 90s and the 80s because of the industrialization. So we started seeing a shift, not as major as the US, but we started seeing a shift towards feminism to a degree. Still conserving the aspect of staying in your marriage. I think one thing that people, I want to clarify when people say that we're more submissive or feminine and whatnot. One thing that I would say is that Latino marriage retention is what's better. We tend to not leave. It doesn't matter how poor quality or good quality your marriage is. We are taught not to divorce. It doesn't matter, even in situations where, and I don't agree with that, of course, but even in situations that we all have friends and families that have been in marriages that are not necessarily even safe. and they tend to stay. So, in my opinion, that varies even within Latin countries of the Caribbean. I would say in Cuba, there's even more feminist femininity in that island specifically because of the regime that they've been living under. Then after that, it's Puerto Rico. Even though we're still having children out of wedlock at a 38%, we still have 62% of the women marry. But then there's the Dominican Republic, which I've heard a lot of many people saying that they will go find a wife over there. There is a chaos in marriage happening right now in the DR. As DR it's moving forward and modernizing itself, the less women are marrying in the Dominican Republic today, unfortunately.
Very, very, very interesting. I always wondered too about this is maybe another question, but like I kind of wonder about this whole idea that's popular there about like passport bros and then going into another country and like picking like the top women. That's a whole nother question, but I just think about like, what are the local guys thinking?
Oh no, where did Sade go? Sade, come back. No, I'm sure she's coming back. Okay, so oh, there you are. Hi.
I just got kicked out of my own stream. This is that means it's gonna be a good one. Anyways, well, I did want to direct thank you for coming back. Hopefully we got the microphone situation. So I did want to direct the question to you, Ali, about whether or not you think Latinas are naturally more submissive.
So no, I don't think that that's true at all. And I stand by everything that I'm about to say. It's going to be offensive. It's going to probably offend, like a couple of people. I think we were right, but being Latina it's very contextual. I'm trying to. I didn't get everyone's names. Like I know Luke Hazley, but
Denise.
Yes. And what's your name?
Denise.
And then what's your ethnicity? And then where do you live?
I'm from Puerto Rico. I moved to California at 25 years old.
Okay. Yeah, and you sound like very Puerto Rican. So like your experience is probably different. So I'm Puerto Rican, right? And then I think that Black men might be sold a lie about Puerto Rican women, and I'll explain. For this specific reason. So my family is actually full of New Yorkers, right? And they did come from the island, but in New York City in the 90s, both Blacks and Puerto Ricans lived together, and they actually created hip hop together, right? So there's a lot of shared personality traits from that demographic that are going to cross over, where like some Black men might be convinced like, oh, let me just go get a Puerto Rican. And then it's like, well, there's not much of a difference, like culturally and behaviorally, right? Because like that they're looking for like this answer, right? But that's in reference to New Yorkers. It does get different. Like I believe before Denise was talking about how in South America, like those women are probably going to be more feminine. And I would agree with that. And I think that that's true. And there's a couple of countries that I've met women from several times over, because I'm from Central Florida, where it's an entire modge podge of different Latinos. There's Caribbean, South American, and there's Mexican as well. And whatever else you could think of. There's plenty of Brazilians as well. And so I would say like the closer the Latina is to her home country and her roots, the more feminine she's going to be, because I think that America has that tendency to just Americanize us. And then, men end up thinking with this ideal, they're going to go out there and they're going to find this great Latina, and they find a closeted feminist because we've just like bought into the culture. But that's kind of what happens with immigration. Like you can only help it to some extent. I can say that I do think, like in my culture, I do think that the women enjoy serving men, but I think it's a 50-50 shot. And I think as well, sometimes they make decisions to serve the wrong men, if that makes any sense. But it's not a magic pill. Like you're like women are women, no matter what race they're from. And you're not going to just get away with, being able to correct, I don't know, or hope for that you're not going to have to deal with the woman in her just because she's a different ethnicity or race, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I agree and disagree to a degree. And I would say with what do I agree? I think it's like I stated at the beginning, it's all about location. If you and this is very unfortunate because of what we're seeing. I agree with the fact that no, you're not gonna just find any random Latina is gonna be happy to serve you. I agree with that 100%. When you go to our island specifically, right, and you go into the city, you're not going to find in the metropolitan area a large supply of feminine women. It's going to be in short supply. You're going to see very similar behavior than you see here in the States, because it goes back to what I said at the beginning. The more industrialized an area is, the more quote unquote obsolete a man becomes. I'm from Kawa, so I'm from the interior. So the more you're in the interior of the island, when you're more in the rainforest areas, you're going to see more marriages, more families, more Christianity, more traditional values, and less of this craziness. Now, is this feminist mindset infecting Latin America? It has always been. Every
Mm.
country in Latin America has a very large fistful of Latinas that abide by that violent mindset. They just stay married. And that gives the illusion that we're different. But we've all seen just as violent as women in here in America. We've seen aunties and grandmas and all these people. My grandma used to carry even a revolver, and she
Mm.
was from the greatest, the silent generation. So
Mm.
we've seen all these things, but she will stay married, and she died even married to her husband. So it's that's I think that's the key component. We just don't leave.
And that goes back to
Mm.
what Denise said about the the less developed the country is, the more marriages you see, because it goes back to the women needing protection of the man, that protection
Mm.
covering of the man. Because again, a family, a husband and a man, they help each other even with the earning, because salaries in our countries, it all depends in which countries, they're very low. So it's economical too. But we do have a level of respect for our men that maybe the more modern life becomes, the less you need to, the less you have a need for a man, and the less respect that you're going to have, because you're not going to have a man around. So
Okay. Very interesting. Allie?
Right. So I did have one point, something that I haven't witnessed, but I'm a millennial Puerto Rican, and I was born in Florida. My mom was born on the island. My grandmother was born on the island. One thing I'll say is that I've never seen in any situation my family saying that Puerto Rican men were bad or talking down about their men, if that makes sense. Like, they might complain about men in general, but I've never heard anyone say that Puerto Rican men were bad. And I think that might be something interesting. I don't know if you ladies have experienced something similar, but I think there might be more loyalty in that way. Like, I don't know why. That's just my experience.
Is the closed door policy that we have. It's like a silent code to never disclose the issues in broad daylight. I don't know if you guys were brought up that way, but I'm pretty sure you guys did. It doesn't matter what happens. It could be the craziest thing in your family, but you handle it behind closed doors. It never gets brought up to light. And it's a positive when it comes to the image of the collective, but it's a negative when actual issues happen. But yeah, it's a positive when
Mm.
it comes to protecting the morale of our men, of course.
It's very interesting that you say that, because it's the same, at least in old school Black culture. Now, this new school stuff, I don't know how to identify with it, but old school Black culture, it was very much the same thing. It's like, whatever happens behind closed doors stays there. Like, your secrets were staying with you and with the inner family, and you had to present a certain way. Now I feel like as soon as there was a market made off of not only misandry, but especially, Black male misandry, and just all the toxic, kind of the city girl toxic stuff that we see now. I think as soon as there was a market basically to kind of put all people's mess, you know, on the platform and make movies about it, talk shows. I mean, if you think like the Oprah Winfrey's of the world, the Alice Walkers, like all these, you know, Black women essentially who kind of put all the stuff on Front Street, all the different inner challenges of like the Black family on Front Street. And then there was a market to monetize that. I think that's when we started to see more of what we see now, which is, you know, openly there being channels and women and influencers who are saying so many disparaging things about Black men. So that culture used to exist within the Black community, but I feel like it really disintegrated. I can't speak to exactly when, but I do think the fact that it being monetized and people can get paid off of it plays a role.
I believe African Americans used to be the most married before integration. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very volatile shift to what we're seeing today, because even in the island, I never knew in the past that before I came here that the Black American culture changed so much. Over there, we were still being taught that the African American culture was the same image as Martin Luther King. So we're very behind on what the Black current culture is.
Right.
So I understand where you're coming from, because I always thought you guys were just like us. Everything was behind closed doors, and it was very, you know, more calm, collected, and, you know, family oriented.
Yeah.
So it was a cultural shock when I came here.
Yeah, no, I absolutely hear you. Now, real quick, I did want to acknowledge some of the super chat. Shout out to there. I said it with the 5. It says, okay, before I met my wife, I was engaged to a Puerto Rican woman. I called it off because she was crazy. Ask ladies, do Latinas raise boys to lead women? I don't know if you guys want to respond to that, but it sounds like maybe he met a New Yoricuan. I think it's what you call it, Allie. It's funny. Actually, one of my close friends actually is New Yoricuan, and she kind of told me how one of her parents is from the island, and then one of them is born in New York, and her mom's like, I think more traditional. Like to this day, she doesn't drive, stay at home, like really traditional. But she said her parents, they tried to integrate her, so like they didn't really speak Spanish to her that much. Like it was like she pretty much got the same feminist propaganda narrative, but she talked about how there were like key aspects of things that her parents wouldn't tell her because they wanted her to fit in. I don't know if that kind of speaks to what you guys were saying earlier, where it's like the environment can really play a huge role. And especially if you have parents who are coming over and they're immigrants and they are afraid that their kids may stick out like a sore thumb and they want them to just like blend in. If they'll just invest in the culture that's there, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I even on my platform I speak on assimilation a lot. Okay. I think, I mean, I know that when we come here, we have the advantage of U.S. citizenship, but it's still a migration because the culture in the country is not the same. So one thing that I refused to understand till recently was, in order for you to move forward in many aspects in America, you have to assimilate. So we used to get on Latinos in the diaspora for not speaking the language, but we have to understand the scrutiny they live under, and only an immigrant can understand that, you know, from their aspect. So I think, yeah, I mean, that's what we.
Oh, looks like she froze.
Yeah, okay, I think that there's a couple of things, like it's kind of hard, I think, if you're Latina, because you have to blend old world and new world traditions, which is a challenge. And so like old world traditions are, you know, more like your traditional feminine beliefs, right? But then you have your new world traditions, because I think a lot of older Latinos tend to think that we're out of pocket or like too modern and things like that. But it's like you can't help but to do it. And one of the things that I do believe ends up happening is like the inability to speak Spanish. So I think it started off with that there were many older Latinos that were ashamed to speak Spanish or were made fun of. Like my grandmother to this day She really doesn't like speaking English. I guess she had negative experiences in New York City when she got there. But there's consequences for that. So like your children can succeed in academia and the job market, but then there's like trickle down effects. Like I don't speak Spanish. And I really wish that I could have, and I really wish that could have been taught to me, but it wasn't an opportunity for me. My mom was working 2 jobs, so I can understand it, and it was my first language, but I lost it. And that's a common story for a couple of Latinos when they come over here. And it's pretty common with Puerto Ricans. Like you'll see people throw shade at us for not knowing Spanish. Like it's a regular occurrence, but I understand it. I would feel I would feel some type of way too. So I get it.
It's common for Mexicans too. I live in California too, and I hear that once the parents started working and the kids started going to school, they wouldn't be allowed to speak Spanish because they needed to integrate within the culture.
Right. Okay, real quick. I see people going back and forth about hip hop. Y'all, this is not the topic of conversation. So if y'all want to have a discussion about the historicity of hip hop and who did what, that's a whole different topic. But please don't be going back and forth with my guest. Okay.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Sorry. I was just passionate because I did a project about it in anthropology. No, it's cool. But actually, so I did want to say something else too. And the reason why you're seeing more Latinas involved with Black men is because whatever colorism I saw when I was really young, it went away. I don't know why it went away or what, but when I was younger, from a Puerto Rican context, Puerto Ricans didn't want their daughters, I guess, dating Black men. Right. And they also didn't want their daughters dating Dominicans. And I'm sure I don't know if you know, but there's like a color difference between Dominicans and Puerto Ricans. Like Dominicans tend to be a lot darker. But the older I got and the more, I guess, I feel like communities commingled, I also feel like it was inevitable too. Like now it's totally, completely socially acceptable to be Latina in our culture and be with a Black man. From a Puerto Rican standpoint, a lot of my family has Black men and Black children. So that's just a stigma that I don't think is there anymore. It might be in some other Latin cultures, but that's something I saw end in my lifetime.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Well, I'm currently married to an African American, so I never grew up hearing that. But I must say, in my family, there is Black people. I think in every Puerto Rican family, there is Black people, at least in the island. I don't know how it is here because there's a disconnect. But yeah, I never heard growing up to not date a Black American or a Black person. As a matter of fact, my dad it's a Black man. So I think what brings us together, like as one of the most common unions among Puerto Ricans and Black men, or Puerto Rican men and Black women, is the fact that our cultures are really not that different when you go to the core. So that's what brings us, for the most part, together.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. And I don't pretend to be an expert in this, but it's like my Puerto Rican friends will all say like they have like maybe like a Black grandfather or a grandmother, and like from my understanding, the Puerto Rican culture itself is very much a mix of indigenous culture, African culture, Spanish. So it's like ethnically, it's not homogenous. So that's
almost all Latin America.
In the Caribbean, because the transatlantic slave trade happened in the Caribbean. So of course, the majority of our people are mixed. Even our language, our Spanish dialect is completely different than that of other Latin countries because it includes African words. It includes African dances and music and traditions and foods. So it's all intertwined.
Absolutely. Now, I did want to acknowledge. Oh, okay, real quick. I wanted to acknowledge the chat. It's been up for the minute. It says
the top right thinks are isolated anecdotal.
No, that was Ali. That person.
Okay,
so I guess they didn't believe that Ali pushed back, or she was just like, "I'm gonna offend somebody," and she did. So shout out to Ali for coming through with her expectation to offend somebody. I just think they were not in agreement with her perspective. Guys, hit the like button, y'all. Likes are free, 99. Also, if you would like to show support to the show, find me on Cash App or Venmo. And as always, I'll be sure to read all super chats. Some of y'all are going off in the comment section, so please behave. And as always, if you would like your comments to be read and addressed, send in a super chat. Support your favorite content creators and all that jazz. Ali, I think you had something you were going to say.
Oh, no, I think I was just waving. I was just excited. I don't think I had anything to say.
Okay. It's all good. All good. Okay. So another question, just to shift a bit. How old are you when you learned how to cook? I will start with you, Luke Hazley.
Very young. When my mom didn't feel like cooking for my dad, she would send me to the kitchen to make him whatever he needed to make. And that's how we learned. And we also sat next to her, around her, anytime that she was making meals, and we would help out. It's kind of the tradition, especially when it's Christmas or like the bigger type holidays. But yeah, very young.
Very, very, very young. Okay. How about you, Denise?
Well, my story is a little bit funny. I started around age 10, but my cooking was a disaster. So I was often given the task of, and trust me, my mom tried several times to teach me, but I was a disaster. So she often made me make the sofrito instead, because that was something I mastered. And tasks like that, like cut the veggies and do this kind of stuff. It was later in life when I was like, you know what, I'm going to take this cooking seriously, because I want my food to taste really good. And now, after many years, they were very surprised. But now I'm in charge of all the Christmas and the Thanksgiving dinners and all this stuff. So I really learned.
I'm glad you learned. Ali, how about you? How old were you when you learned how to cook?
When I learned how to cook in general, I was 7. When I learned how to cook like Spanish food, I was 10. But a series of unfortunate events occurred in which I could no longer make Spanish food, which is like really sad. And I have to relearn it. No, I'm serious. I was allergic to rice for a couple of years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, wow. Which is like, really bad as a Latina and very.
How did that happen?
No, I got the short end of the stick when it came to like autoimmune conditions and stuff like that. But the cooking it's actually really funny. So we'll have like rice and beans for like holidays, Thanksgiving and for Christmas and stuff like that. And I guess like arroz con habichuelas if you're Puerto Rican, I guess. But y'all, people will talk trash if you mess up the rice at Thanksgiving or Christmas. They will let you know. They don't care. They're gonna let you know. If you made something bad, they will say it to you. They're like, "I fall," and you're like, "Oh my God, okay, thanks, guys." So it's good. It's good feedback. I would say it's tough love. There's also a habit of the holidays letting you know if you're too skinny, and then letting you know if you're too fat. So it's always a good time. Very controversial.
Like I said, that's how it is. I guess I want to say old school, because like my parents and a lot of my family were just old school, but it's the same thing. It's like you could tell, at least for me, I could tell the difference between when my grandma cooked and her generation versus like their kids. Like this is a big difference. And people was always looking at your legs and looking at your waist size and having something to say that was inappropriate, just to kind of let you know what they thought. Like so it used to be like that. And I think, in certain places it is, but like I said, this whole modern family thing, I think is just unraveling so very much. But that's something I hear all the time. Like a big complaint I hear all the time is that there's women out there who just legitimately don't know how to cook. And like, I don't understand that, because I learned to cook really young and I also had an interest in cooking. So it was never a thing to me, but there are so many men out there who complain about women like burning like water. Like, how do you burn water? Like just having zero concept of anything in the kitchen. And I'm like, I don't understand it. I don't get it.
In our, at least in our culture and in my family, if you don't cook, you're going to get shamed massively. You're going to get shamed. It's the same with you being unmarried. I think the oldest to actually get with my now husband. And my aunts, my mom, my grandma, they literally were on me. And I was like, oh my God. And I was just, what, 25? So
God.
they were like, we need grandkids, we need the husband now. You don't need to keep waiting. Move. They will not have
that.
Yeah,
Honestly,
they will not have any filter. They won't.
I wish we could bring some of that back, honestly, because I think we like you had a whole generation, and actually, I think it was Liz who spoke to this on a debate we not debate like a combo we had a few weeks back on How to Be a Wife series, and she's Mexican, and she was talking about how, like, you know, as a Latina, she actually heard some feminist talking points being like, look, don't get a relationship so soon, like focus on your career, because those women were coming from trauma, and some of those women, they were staying in marriages that were bad. So it's like, and we got that message, especially as Black men, primarily from women, I think, who had bad marriages or were in bad situations. But it's like, it creates this whole imbalance, because now they're telling you that, like, time doesn't matter when it comes to marriage. Time doesn't matter when it comes to having kids, and it absolutely does, especially when a man worth anything. So I'm like, I wish we could bring a little bit of that back. I'm not saying it has to be like 100%, but like at least 80% or something, you know? So let's see what's going on. Introvert Boricua says, let the guests hear your Spanish shades. Good. Thank you, Introvert Boricua, for that too. He's saying my Spanish is good. I did like a Spanish broadcast with a friend of mine. Gosh, like a few months ago. I don't think I've done a Spanish broadcast since. Yeah, but I appreciate the $2. Okay. Okay. So really quick. So you guys all pretty much learned how to cook young. That's great. That's really good. How about like cleaning or maintaining a home? Like, what was the process for that? I'm just curious.
Every Saturday morning, the music was on. That was something that told us you gotta get up and start the cleaning. That you don't want to be in bed when that music starts going, because
it's going to be
going
bad.
to be woken up.
Yeah. The weekends are for cleaning. Definitely Saturday is deep cleansing. Sunday is washing clothes. Legit.
Yeah, I can completely confirm. And we only ever use one kind of floor cleaner, and it's Fabuloso, specifically the purple kind. I don't know. I don't know what you guys use.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, I still use Fabuloso to this day. But yeah, there's no sleeping in. If your mom is in the mood to clean on the weekend, it's over for you. Like this is just done. Now it would feel good though if your mom slept in for once. You're like, yes, this is my moment, and you roll over. But yeah, definitely an expectation. And sometimes it's worse because my grandma, she had all these knickknacks everywhere, and each one had to be like dusted. Where my mom's house had less decorations, so I was pretty fortunate in that.
You're so lucky. You're so lucky. The figuras are the worst to clean because you have to dump them in a container and then start washing them by hand because they collect dust and there's no purpose to them, but you gotta clean them. They have no purpose.
So you guys, sounds like you guys have like a weekly cleaning ritual. And would you say that's very much like a Latina, like cultural trait, or you think it's just no, this is like was there like pressure in your family, like if you don't know how to clean, if you don't know how to cook, then you're not like a true woman? Did that exist? Or
well, my mom used to say to us all the time, you don't want your husband to leave you because you're an unclean woman. You know, it was always like that. I'm telling you, there's no filter in the Latino culture. When it comes to your mom teaching you these things, she will shame you. And shame is the only tool to learning. So you always had that paranoia. Oh my God, everybody's gonna find out that I am a dirty woman. I can't be like this. I need to be very clean. So you were always shamed for that, and you were always warned that that could happen.
So you said shame. What you said, that was the teaching tool. It wasn't anything else. It was shame.
Yes.
It was
just shame. Well, like with a lot of things. So in the Latino community, we have this thing, this gender dynamic of masculinity and femininity, where it's called like Marianismo and Machismo. And so like Marianismo is like being as close to Mother Mary as possible, which I'm sure, as you all know, is next to impossible and cannot be done. And so like that's where cleanliness comes in, but it's also where like SLUT shaming comes in. Now, some of this stuff was good, but some of this stuff will put you in therapy too, that you have to like kind of get over and like work with shame. And like in regard to cleaning, it was good, but sometimes you want to be excited to have people over instead of being stressed out because your mom wants the house A1 perfection, like nobody's living there. So there's benefits and there's drawbacks too. And then I feel like this is my interpretation as machismo, because a lot of times people complain about toxic masculinity, and I'm like, well, I mean, we have like I don't think that's what this is, but like I think daughters are held under higher scrutiny than sons. Like your son can do no wrong. You know what I mean? And there's other things too, like some chores. I don't know about you guys, but some chores were for daughters and some chores were for sons.
Definitely. Even the last time I went to PR was to take care of my mom recovering from her surgery, and you could even see when we were taking care of her, most of my cousins and my uncles came. Nobody had to tell us anything, and that's something I started observing after being here for almost a decade. I was like, it's so crazy how everybody falls in place. We were all in the kitchen, dicing the fruits and prepping the meals and taking care of mom and doing stuff. And the guys were outside making sure the plumbing was working right, and, doing the gardening and the watching and whatever. So it's almost like you're already programmed to be this way, and it keeps being passed down because children start being trained this way. It doesn't, I think the concept of teenager doesn't exist to many Latinos. At least it did not exist to me.
Interesting.
You didn't have a space to be a teen. That when people say, "Oh my God, I had a space to do all of these things and just exist and float," I didn't have that luxury. I did not.
Well, I can say that wasn't my experience either. As a Black woman, that's certainly like, I mean, when you talk about chore schedules and the whole program you had to go through anytime somebody came over, it's like I identify with that. That's all I can say. Like stories, like I totally get that. So it's quite interesting. I do want to acknowledge the super chat. It says it's refreshing to see 4 beautiful, intelligent women having a conversation. LOL. I'm not simping, just facts. Thank you. Showing support to your favorite content creators is not simping. Like, we need to remove the shame out of actually supporting people who are giving messages that are worthwhile. Like, no, I appreciate you. This is what keeps us going. So send through the support. I appreciate all of you guys. As always, y'all, hit the like button. Likes are free 99 and super chats are open.
So going back to the shaming concept that Denise mentioned, even at my age, I'm 56 years old right now. I go home and I got to make sure that I'm from top to bottom, I look okay. Because if I don't, that my mother is going to look at me from top to bottom, bottom top, and she's going to have something to say if I'm not wearing the appropriate stuff. So it's part of the culture, that shaming thing, that you got to look pristine, because then your mom is going to call you out on it.
So would you ladies
chip nails? The whole thing with chip nails is better to not have nail polish, ladies, than to have a chip nail, especially when your mom is a Latina, because she will tell you and you will never hear the end of it.
Wow. That's crazy. Now, would you say, okay, because it sounds like at one end, the shaming, I guess, helped as far as being productive in certain ways, cooking, cleaning, knowing how to present yourself a certain way, knowing how to, I guess, gatekeep certain conversations so you wasn't putting your business all out in Front Street. So these are all really good skills that can come in handy. But then there's also the psychological effects that, Ali mentioned, where it's like, you grow up in a shame-based environment that can be incredibly crippling to a certain extent. So would you say one that you think shaming was more helpful than not? Or do you think that there's another way that you can help school somebody, help her to be a feminine woman, help her to be a culturally centered Latina woman and not have to be in therapy for years to deal with shame? Like, if there's another way to do that.
I think that, like, I think that was a very old school concept, and I don't know that it necessarily translated well for me, because I was the kind of kid where if you just explained to me why I was doing something wrong, I would respond to that. Whereas, like, if you shamed me, I was more likely to act out. So I think for me, in a lot of ways, it was a net negative. And, I think there's actually a lot of Latin women, because the SLUT shaming is actually really big, right? And it doesn't matter if, like, the adult women are doing things that they shouldn't be doing too. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's just like one of those things that that can be a problem. But there's some adult Latinas too that still kind of struggle with, well, even though I had that experience, how can I have a healthy sex life in adulthood and a marriage and things like that. So I think that there's, pros and cons, but I think that was an old school tactic that's not going to translate well for, like, my generation of Latino, like a millennial. And obviously it's not going to fly for, like, a Gen Z Latino. I have no idea how Gen Z is going to go. I hope they turn out okay.
Yeah, it's like, you can hope and pray.
That's a tough order. That's a tall order. Look, I'm sorry, but it is true. I would say, look, I'm gonna share my experience. My parents, after 30 years together, decided to divorce. I was the little one. I was the baby of the family. So I was 16 when they decided to divorce. And watching this whole dynamic of how the whole family, because when you marry, at least in the Latino culture, two families come together, and because we have this familial spirit, and every holiday that we celebrate, every activity that we observe brings family together. It's designed to make families interact. Even when you present your daughter as a teenager at 15, that is made for the family to acknowledge, hey, this girl is now a lady. She's stopped being a girl. But it brings the whole family together. So when my parents divorced, watching how my mom was shamed for make that decision, and they were pushed to come back together, to the point that they have been separated and divorced for years, but they live 2 houses away from each other. They still stay in touch with one another and what each one is doing. My mom never remarried. My dad did remarry 10 years later.
Okay.
So the chain, to a degree, I would say, you have to evaluate. I needed therapy even for certain aspects related to shame and other things. But I would say that watching the opposite of shaming, and seeing the amount of long-term therapy that will be needed if shaming was replaced with something else, I'd rather take the therapy that comes with shaming tactics than the one that comes with the liberalism that we're seeing replacing the shame. We need to bring shame back. That's just my opinion, because it worked for me and it made me stronger, more durable, even as a woman, as a wife, and now as a mother. So definitely, I think shaming works. Don't change anything about it. Just teach kids how to overcome it, because the world will shame you with the results you get, as by the decisions that you make. So why not expose your children very early on in home to shame? So does that make sense?
I agree with Denise. In fact, we don't use it with our Gen Zs at home, but we are seeing the huge influence feminism is having on them through school, through social media. And we're having, it's 4 of us women, 4 sisters, and my 3 sisters have children. I never had children, so I watch my nieces and nephews. But we do see the influence that feminism is having on the girls, especially. It's a daily battle about what they think life should be and what we, more traditional think about even the attires they wear, what they wear. They, would let them know that it's not a good idea to show as much skin. And their response is, no, the boys are supposed to not look, even if we were walking around naked. So that's where the back and forth comes in. And it's really trying. And it has gotten to a point where I think, God, I don't have kids, because it would be a daily battle if you had kids in the modern world.
Allie, what are your thoughts?
No, I just had a very negative experience with shame, but like some of the stuff is good, some of the stuff is bad, some of it's raising children, some of it's, abusing children. I'm just going to be blunt about it. Like, I think that there are some things that made sense for our grandparents to do because their only concerns was, are they healthy? Are they fed? Do they have shelter? Do they have clothes? And then I think it just kind of changed. So I think that I just happened to be a child who was born with a temperament that was too sensitive for shaming. But at the same time, like, if you're going to shame me, then you need to be a woman that I look up to. You cannot be out here in the streets and then get upset with me when I'm copying you because that's all I know. That's my only pushback. And I'll give it up to my grandma. Like, Abuela was holding it down. Like, she's I can look up to her. But, I think there's some things that happen with the Americanization of Latinas. And I think, for Puerto Ricans, I think it was more of the Gen X population, because I'm not the only daughter that kind of, struggled in that way. I would hear it from my girlfriends in school. But yeah, I mean, grandma was holding it down. But, feminism, I think, is pervasive. And I see it even kind of in some family things, right? So my grandma, she loves cooking. Like, it's her jam. It makes her happy. She has a big, what is it? It's cast iron. It's steel, but it's a big pot, right? She makes a big pot of rice. Only about 2 people in the house to begin with. So I don't know why she's making this giant pot of rice, but she likes cooking and she cooks every day for my grandfather. He's retired, but he does the primary finances. And I see that, and I look at, femininity and masculinity, and I see that he does this really cute thing where he gets her mug and he has it ready in the morning with a Keurig with water and her coffee cup prepared. So, like, there's a yin and a yang, but you'll see, like, the more modern women, they'll look at that and they'll say, well, why is she always cooking for him? Like, you don't see the cute things that he does. So I think that, we want to think that the Latin culture is impervious to feminism. I really don't think so. I'm not going to get political, but I will say, like, you're seeing more and more when it comes to, like, termination of pregnancy, that is also starting to appear liberally in South American cultures. Like in Chile, you're seeing, like, the feminism really exploding. Yeah. So, I mean, it's rough out there for men. I agree. And I think all you can really do is try to have a 2-parent household with a masculine husband and a feminine wife to your best ability. I don't think we're all going to be able to, but, I'd rather die trying. So.
No, I absolutely hear you. You guys all have such beautiful responses. I think what you guys said was really interesting about shame, because I'm totally in agreement about, like, we live in a culture right now where it's almost as if standards have been totally removed. And sometimes people conflate standards or repercussions with shaming. And it's like, no, just because I say, okay, if you throw the ball up in the air, it's going to hit the ground, that doesn't mean I'm shaming you. It doesn't mean I'm judging you. That is a reality. And to your point, like, you talk about slut shaming. It's like, well, yeah, if you go around and have sex with 2,000 men, you may get pregnant, you may get some diseases, you are going to have psychological issues. Like, so I'm totally in agreement where this culture where it almost wants to, like, remove all standards, and standards are oppressive and shameful. It's like, no, that's not healthy. That needs to be back. Like, we need to instill that, and women need to know that there is going to be a consequence for every action you make, good or bad, and enforce that. But I also understand what you're saying about Ali, where it's like, sometimes if it can go overboard, it really can in some ways produce an opposite effect. Because I also know very well, and I'm familiar with very people who struggle with shame in the ways that has actually helped impede their ability to succeed in some of these different areas, especially when it comes to interpersonal relationships. So I think there's a healthy balance. But, to your point, many of our parents were doing the best that they could, and what they were doing was working a lot better than what's happening now. I think I could I could say that much for sure.
Yeah, I think if you look at it this way, um, gentle parenting was introduced. I will say around the 90s. I'm an
Okay.
80s baby, so of course
Okay.
it was. I mean, I was late 80s. I'm still a millennial, but I saw in the 90s how the psychology community started introducing gentle parenting.
Okay.
And I'm seeing now as an adult the result of that, because I remember the discussions that my parents will have, the conversations over dinner, because my mom studies psychology. And she started trying to introduce those things, but my dad refused. So it's like,
Okay.
no, I will say no to my daughters. There are things that I'm not going to allow. And if I have to use the belt, I will use it. And my dad was very adamant about that, to the point that you will self-check yourself because you knew your dad would not approve. Till this
Yeah.
day, there are things I don't do because my dad would not approve. And my dad lives 3,000 miles away from me. So he can't see
Point.
what I do, but I know in the back of my head, wherever he is, I will be embarrassing him if I do this over here. So when we see the results of this gentle parenting with kids that have bubble wrapped or kind of like, how can I say it, become more soft to the touch and getting offended by criticism that's actually normal because it's for their benefit. We're seeing the results, and I want people to understand this is the result of gentle parenting. You have
Interesting.
children that cannot take criticism because they were never told no, they were never shamed for their behavior, so they remain unchecked. They did not know they were wrong because mom and dad never said to me that I should be ashamed of doing stuff and regulating my behavior. You combine that with the lack of interaction with social media and video games, and you get a society that doesn't socialize. Therefore, there's no friends around you that can regulate your behavior. So that's what we're seeing today. That's why I'm a firm believer of shame. It's because of that.
I have a question for the ladies. Luke, Hazley, and then Denise. Did you guys grow up in two-parent households?
Yes.
Until 16 years old, yeah. At 16, my parents divorced.
Yeah, okay. So that's the contrast in our experiences. That's definitely the contrast, because I can say, like, I mean, I think my experience would just be a lot different. I've had friends that were Latin who did grow up in two-parent households, and it's like a night and day difference. So I suppose like my situation is might be like a consequence of feminism. You know what I mean?
So you grew up just with your mom or with your dad?
No, I only ever lived with my mom.
Okay. It could be. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Did she have like, because sometimes I have friends that have grew up just with their mothers, and sometimes it's not because the mom is like a bad person. It's just she was just overwhelmed by all the work and stuff. So she didn't have necessarily the patience to put shame, but in not to crush confidence when you shame, So maybe that's what you experience with it, because my dad often brought the balance to my mom. Because look, we women and children, we're pure energy. Okay, men are focus, and energy without focus is chaos. So when you remove the focus from the family, which is the male, the patriarch, we're just pure energy that's flowing around in a crazy way that's chaotic. So maybe that's what you lived through, and it wasn't implemented properly because your dad couldn't focus that energy. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an uncommon experience. I mean, I'm sure you guys keep up with like, statistics and things like that. But no, I mean, you just have to give your parents grace, right? Like they literally do their best, and whatever you experience as their child, is usually related to what they experience as a child. So like intergenerational trauma is also like a thing in our culture and community as well. Yeah. So it's just like it's some things you just can't help, but you can just try to do better moving forward yourself as a woman. I know that.
Intergenerational.
We all have those, trust me. And my family, I've had my own. There was a point where a lot of masculine traits were taught to me, and I had to demasculinize myself through therapy. As a matter of fact, I even participated on one of Kevin Samuels' show, because for me to start that process, I needed to shave away part of my family that was like that. And that was very hard for me to come to terms with, because you're taught that your family is your compass in life. So shaving away a part of that, it was very difficult for me to understand. So I was like, oh, I disagree with what he's saying, but then he made complete sense. And it's for the best. So we all have those traumas. Don't think that just because yours is that specific one, that all of us are perfect out here. As a matter of fact, we are not. We're flawed people that have a lot of issues. It's just some of us decide to work through them. Look at how well you're doing now compared to your mother or your grandmother in the past. The point is that you're getting better, and that you did better than them. I think when you do that, that is the goal of every generation. That should be the goal of every single one of us. Do better than the past.
I completely agree. And I think you hit the nail on the head about like, everybody has drama. Everybody has interpersonal, if you really want to get real. And the sooner you can do sooner you can do the work, the better. I know within Black culture, for a long time now, I think it's starting to change, but for a long time, like mama was off limits. Mama was completely off limits, right? Anything that she did, anything that she said, Dad, I think you maybe could here or there, depending on the scenario, maybe because the last couple of decades has been all about throwing men under the bus. But mama, you couldn't say nothing that she did. And the amount of men that I've heard allude to the fact or explicitly say that, their mothers negatively impacted them in some way or did things that were harming, which, we're all humans, like that's natural. But the amount of men that I know who have said that, it's just like, it's quite overwhelming. And I think there should be a space, like you said, Ali, it's like our parents did the best that they could, and we should acknowledge that and honor that. And also there needs to be a space of recognizing like sometimes they did the best that they could and it wasn't good enough. And we have to do whatever we got to do to heal from that, to work through that. So then next generations can do better. And I do think some of the results of what we see now, the toxic culture, I think is largely a result of just people having all this stuff they have not addressed and then passing it on to other people, not dealing with their junk and then raising up their kids, with the same mess. And it just is like, it's like a never ending cycle that repeats itself. So, okay. So yeah, I do want to be mindful of, I know Ali's time. I know you mentioned that, you have some places to be. So this has been great. This has been amazing. I have so many other questions, but let me see. I think we've touched on a lot. So let me see real quick. Let me see if I have one and kind of wrap this thing up. I know you guys all spoke to really feminism. That was actually a question that I had, but you guys spoke to it really well. Ali, you said feminism is not, or the Latina community is not, what was the word you used? They're not like impervious to
we're not immune. Oh no. In South, in South America, they got topless protesting feminists too. Don't get it twisted. Like it's going down. It's going down.
So maybe I could end. I could end with this question: what are common misconceptions that you've heard people hold about Latina women? I'll start with you, Ali. What do you think is a common misconception that you have heard or continue to hear about Latina women or Puerto Rican women, if you kind of want us to speak specifically for your ethnicity?
Yeah. Because like context matters when it comes to Latino cultures, because just like the diaspora is, really nuts. But one of the things that I think, probably has been untrue is like that our degree of femininity. Like Denise is from the island, you know what I mean? So I think that's going to be a lot different than where it's like for me. But you know, I got programming too. I was told, and this is not uncommon for other women that were millennials that grew up in Central Florida as well, like you can't depend on a man. You need to have a career. Figure out your career first and then come back to it later. So I think that is probably a misconception, like the ready-made stay-at-home wifey Latina. You know, maybe that was something that existed like a generation or two ago, but these ways are dying out, and it's hard because there's things that you really want to keep from your culture, but you can't help but to assimilate, you know, in the name of success. And so like I think that's something that I'm always going to juggle with, you know, and it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. I know that I'm proud of my roots, but I also know that we get packaged as like some form of salvation. I'm like, y'all know that we have estrogen too, right? Like
so you're saying there is no ready-made Latina all the time that exists. Like Latinas can be just as feminist, they can be just as ratchet under the right or the wrong circumstances, under the wrong program.
It's how close the Latina is to her home roots. I think that's the biggest determining factor.
Okay. Really interesting. Denise, what about you? What are common misconceptions that people hold about Latina women? I think in your case, Puerto Rican women. Like, what's something that you've heard?
Well, I think I agree with what Ali was saying regarding, at least I can speak for the island from what I've seen, is the fact that we're already coming into this notion that we, just because we're Latinas, we're going to be here to, you know, program to serve our husbands and be the most feminine we can be. That is far from the truth. I think, as a matter of fact, millennial Latinas are the last that were taught, at least at a 60% rate. And I want people to hear this right. At a 60% rate, millennial Latinas were the last group that was taught that you have to marry at an early age, that you giving your body away was something that was shame and you were not supposed to become a prostitute, and a lot of other things. So Gen Z and ahead, you're not going to find this. So when I hear sometimes many American folks saying that they're going to find an 18-year-old Latina that's going to be happy to serve them, it's cringe, because feminism has been making its way into the Latin culture through, I don't know if you guys remember novelas like Rubí, La Dueña, Doña Bella, Doña Bárbara. All of these novelas have been programming, and they have been being made constantly. So now, with the inception of the internet and social media, we're seeing the detriment. We have look up all these ladies. Look at Yailin Lamas Viran, Karol G, Tokisha, even Cardi B, that gets blamed for what you know, the image of Black women has become today. She's Latina.
She's Latina, yeah.
So all of these things that I hear often when a lot of American males are saying that they're going to get an 18-year-old or 22-year-old, this, and that. I think you have better chances at just going into Latin America, if you will love to do so, with the expectation of vetting Latinas the same way you vet American women, with the same scrutiny, because we are not special. There's nothing magical about us. We are women, and we're human beings as part of human nature. So don't come with that expectation so you don't suffer.
And to what Denise said, I would say that if you're thinking about bringing that Latin girl back to the United States, and you think that she's going to maintain that femininity and just wanting to be just perfect for the husband here in the United States, I don't think so, because the influence of feminism in this country will 90% hit her.
90%.
Going to, yeah.
Wow.
It's bad. So if you're planning on being a passport guy, just think about staying there in whatever country you go to in South America and living till the end of time, because if you bring her back, if you bring her back, she's going to be contaminated with feminism.
Yeah.
Oh my
All it
God.
takes is a couple of girlfriends. Y'all, this happens all the time. I grew up in Central Florida.
Yes.
It's immigrant city. All it takes is a couple of them. Like, you know, in America, we have child support. You know that, right? And they're like, oh, word. And I get to keep my citizenship. How long do I have to be married? Yo, immigrants talk. I'm not playing with you guys. Like, don't be terrified. Just be wise.
I've heard also it's never too late. I'm a sound engineer, right? But I've heard from certain American girlfriends that I've had in the past, it's never too late to go get more education and get your doctorate degree. You know, it's never too late. I'm like, I have a husband. I don't need to go back to college. I am
Like,
good.
why? What's wrong?
You know, and I've heard a lot of stuff. Like, you really don't need to take anything from that guy. You know that you really don't need to do, like, you are exposed to this. And if you don't have, like, I think Ali nailed it at the beginning, if you don't have those deep rooted notions in, you know, depending on your culture, you're going to be easily influenced. So I will say stay there with your significant other overseas, or if you're gonna bring her here, be very careful, because it's bound to happen. It's bound to happen. Unfortunately, I mean, imagine I met my husband here and I'm married, and I even tell him all the time, I wish we could translate our life and just move back to the mountains of Puerto Rico. That's how bad it is, and I'm already married. So imagine if you bring one of these ladies over here, and it's mainly because of that. I hate city life, but I mean, this is where he's at, so this is where I'm supposed to be. So be very careful, guys.
No, you guys, so much wisdom to share, and I appreciate you guys sharing your perspective. I mean, you guys all know have different two of you are Puerto Rican. I think you said you're from El Salvador, Lucasely?
Nicaraguan.
Or Nicaragua. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously the Latina community is not a monolith. There's all these different experiences, but it was been very, very interesting to hear your guys' perspective, and also hear how, you know, really under the right or wrong circumstances, anybody can be polluted from toxic femininity, toxic feminism. And I think that's really overall what I really wanted to talk about, because I do think that, to your point, people who don't talk to sometimes other ethnicities or don't have real life interactions with them, they can go online and out of their own pain or their own frustration start to idealize something and not understand that, like, hey, people over there are just as human as the people in your community that you're trying to run from. So if you decide to leave or date, marry out, gather, prosper, or whatever, cool, but just be aware that these things still exist, you know what I mean? And operate in a way that's going to be wise and put you in the right position. So I see Costa Rican. I actually know a couple who moved to Costa Rica and their family, and they post pictures all the time that look like amazing. So this has been fun. So again, I do want to be mindful. I know, Ali, you have a busy schedule and also a lot going on with you. So I want to honor your time. I do appreciate you for being here and being with us. And also thank you, Denise and Lucasely, for coming on and hanging out. Guys, be sure to check out their information. I need to go. I think I posted everything in the description, but if I haven't, I'll go back and double check. But check their channel out. Lucasely 20. I think you're called Latin Splaining, right, Denise? If I'm not mistaken, that's your YouTube.
Yes.
Latin Splaining. Yeah, go check them out. You guys already know we're from Sapien. She's the GOAT, right? So go check them out. Like, subscribe, binge watch, leave a comment, show some love and support, guys. Also, if you like this, hit the like button, and also show some love on Cash App or Venmo, super chats. Support your favorite content creators. Y'all know how this goes. So if you guys have any final words you would like to leave before you hop off, let me know. Ali, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'm in support of the passport bros. I say this all the time. I'm just gonna keep it real. Who do you know flying in from the east to marry a woman from the West. I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody that's trying to do that. But you
No.
have to, pick the country wisely, is what I would say. Because I think a lot of men, they get caught up. I want a beautiful Latina, 10 out of 10, spicy, Colombian, Venezuelan, which those are the most beautiful women. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying, like, maybe take the doña route. You know what I mean? Like, look for the mother of your kids. You know what I mean? Like, just explore the countries that you wouldn't think about. Talk to your Latino friends. Actually, yeah, go to dinners with your Latino friends. Get a variety of friends. Ask them about their culture. Ask them about their country, and go from there. Don't just be like, oh, yeah, I want the hotness, and that's it. Because that's how you get burned, guys. That's how you get burned. So those are my closing thoughts.
Thank you, Ali. I appreciate it. And you forgot to add the accent, because you know that Latino accent always, or Spanish accent always gets people. So, but thank you for dropping bars. And yeah, you were so right on, like, get some friends first, like, before you start going around and actually, glorifying Colombian women. Talk to a Colombian. I have a Colombian friend of mine who tells me the real. So that would help. So again, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you. You guys go check out her channel. She's doing really, really good stuff. And Denise, I don't know if you had any last final words, closing words you'd like to leave with the panel.
Well, I would say thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I've watched a lot of the content before, but it was really nice to be up here with you ladies and with you, Shay Sade. I would say same. I support, expanding your horizons when something doesn't work. I mean, it's the same thing that you would do for a job. You're looking, let's say that marriage is a job position that you're trying to fill within your business, and the supply of employees that's around you in your vicinity doesn't necessarily fulfill your needs. Well, you have to go to a different pool. The same applies for a wife. Let's not forget that as a wife, we're basically applying for a job with our resume, with what we can prove and we can bring to that equation. So if you think that you have better chances doing it somewhere else, I support you 100%. And that applies for everyone. So, but always go with that in mind. Never go with the fantasized reality that we have been sold out here, that just because she's a Latina, she's going to be this steamy sweet lady that's always going to be ready for me and do everything. Go with the same mindset that you will vet any woman, and you should be okay. But just don't go with that mindset that it's guaranteed that you're going to find a sweet Latina, because you might find the extra spicy, which is code for masculine.
Oh, extra spicy is called spicy. Makes it sound all exciting,
right? It's like I think we have hidden masculinity with spice. Spicy means fire, chaos, masculine energy. So you will find that too. And look for women outside of the metropolitan areas in Latin America. I think that's one of the best advices that the passport bros can get. Do not date city women in Latin countries. Go to the mountains, go to the rainforests, go to the interior parts. That's where the real women are.
Wow, that's really, really good advice, because I'm sure a lot of them will go to Medellin, Cartagena, if you're going to like Colombia or some of those big places where those women are like, the woman, they got the hint that American men are out there. So they're probably putting on their A game, but that doesn't mean that they don't have their own issues.
Of course.
So,
we all do.
Yeah, good stuff. So Luke Hazley, what do you have? Final words or just things that you would like the audience to know?
It was a pleasure meeting you ladies. Beautiful conversation. And I agree with Denise. If you're going to meet the woman of your life down in South America, Central America, the Caribbean, just make sure you don't go to the big cities, because those girls are onto you, and they know, and they create these like groups of people that will take advantage mostly of you. So just make sure that you have a local in those cities too, to guide you through, because you don't want to do it on your own. I mean, you could, if you know the language or the culture, but I would recommend that you find someone that could guide you through the culture and could introduce you with the right families, because you want a girl that has a good family and you want to observe her behavior, and that's part of your vetting. So aside from that, yeah, passport guys, great. Good luck.
Yeah. I think everybody here is in favor of the passport bros or men going where they can find the best options. I see nothing wrong with it. It doesn't make me feel insecure at all. So, granted, I'm married, maybe that's why. But I'm like, yeah, men who have options should absolutely explore them, because women would do the same thing. So it's only natural. And I think what you guys all alluded to was really great, how it's really less about the race of the individual, obviously. This is why I wanted to talk about this, because you have those kind of silly ideas going out there. And it's really more about the environment. And you even said, women in cities, women in the West period, American women in the West period don't have a great opportunity. And then when you start going to some of those more developing nations, if they are in the city and are in those places where they're getting fed feminism, they can still run into the same problem. So I think overall, if you're looking for a traditional woman, whether it's in Latin America, whether you're going to, or, the Caribbean, or whether they're going to Africa, whether you're going to Asia, whatever, it's like, you're probably going to be better off going where those women are not so influenced by the toxic elements of Western culture, and they're still very deeply connected with their own culture. I would think that would be the best advice for men, no matter what country they may be traveling to. So all good stuff. Well, I appreciate you ladies. This has been really, really fun, guys. Again, be sure to check them out. Now, what's the best for you ladies? What would be the best place for people to find you? YouTube, Instagram? Do you guys have a preference, or any other platform?
No, I think YouTube for the most part. I mean, yeah, YouTube.
YouTube.
Okay. Awesome, guys. Well, again, be sure to check them out. I do appreciate you ladies for coming on. You are welcome on my platform anytime. This was really fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you.
Good night.
good night. Bye. Okay, guys. So this was fun. I do want to make sure I acknowledge real quick. I saw, I think, like a super chat or so come through. Shout out to you, XXXXXX. It says, thank you, ladies, for your candidness and truth. Much love. Thank you for the 2 on this super chat. Much appreciated. Also, shout out to you, L. Nixon, the voice of reason, for the 10. It says, hey, Shay. Hey, Allie. Good to see you guys. Hello, everyone on the panel and in the chat. I appreciate y'all. So this is an interesting conversation. I mean, really, at the end of the day, I think it truly does come down to culture. Obviously, it's not about race. It's not about a person's genetic, whether they're genetically more predisposed or less predisposed to be feminine. I mean, it really comes down to environment. Those are 4 different ladies who were speaking to the fact that even as Latina women, they're not, they know aggressive, feminist, male hating Latinas out there who can be just as volatile as any other woman. And I know this is, this has been a pretty good big talking point within the space, especially within the black social space. And I really do think it comes down to, again, environment for guys who are really, really looking for traditional women, avoiding the cities. I think, as they mentioned, maybe avoiding areas where women may have been brainwashed for some of the different toxic feminism is probably going to be the best route. It's not necessarily about race, obviously. It's more about truly the culture in the environment. So a lot of good insight there. So yeah, like I said, especially for those of you who are thinking about going abroad, be safe, have fun. Whether it's in Latin America, Caribbean, Africa, Asia, wherever. I think what they mentioned makes so much sense. You're looking for a traditional woman, go in environments where traditional femininity is still celebrated and cultivated. Don't be going to those environments where these women are being brainwashed by the same toxic stuff that many of us are trying to get off of in America. So good stuff. Again, guys, if you like this, be sure to like it, share it with someone. Maybe we can do a part 2, because I know, we had 2 I didn't know it was 2 Puerto Ricans, but yeah, 2 Puerto Ricans and Nicaraguan on there. And obviously the Latino community is not a monolith. And I would like to hear from some Afro-Latinas. So if any of you guys know anybody, let me know, hit them up. I was looking for some, but I just didn't have as much luck. But if you guys know of any who are available, I would love to continue this conversation. and get some Afro Latinas to kind of weigh in on their experience, because I think that would be really interesting. As always, I'm trying to think if I have anything else. Yeah, great show once again. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys are able to glean something from this. And again, if you like this, if you found this helpful, be sure to share it with somebody. As always, support this channel. You can do so Cash App, Venmo. Please become a channel member for as little as $4.99. Do have exclusive content there. We do have exclusive conversations. So if that interests you, you can become a channel member for as little as $4.99, and you'll hear some of that behind the scenes stuff of what we're doing, and also have access to more personal conversations, y'all. So this was fun. Thank you for hanging out. And yeah, I'm trying to think if I have anything else. I think this is all I got, guys. So stay tuned for the upcoming content. Hit the notification bell if you have not already. And we will talk later, guys. Okay, bye.